Everyone, and welcome to the November 13th regular board meeting. Dr. Rock, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Mrs. Elba?
Here.
Mrs. Gator?
Here.
Mrs. Moomin?
Here.
Mr. Freeman?
Here.
Miss Mitchell?
Here. All board members are present. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are at well, before we get started, we have a new system in place, and Jonathan has asked all board members to please speak clearly and into the mic so that we can be picked up on the new mechanism over there. We are at item 1.3, approval of the November 13th regular board member agenda. Dr. Rock or Mr. Jolly, are there any additional changes?
No additional changes at all.
And then just item 1.4, there's no minutes to vote on.
So should we just take it out?
Yes.
Okay, we can just take it out.
I didn't know that it would still remain as a heading.
Yeah,
And we'll be all caught up in December.
Right.
There's a meeting that I'm reviewing right now for an
Okay.
amendment.
all right, thank you. And then we move to item 1.5, public participation.
Approval of
Oh,
the
you know what, I'm sorry, we didn't finish the approval. If I can have a motion on the floor to approve item 1.3.
Madam
And
Chair,
we are removing item 1.4, approval of the minutes, because we don't have any minutes to approve.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'd like to approve 1.3, approval of tonight's agenda, November 13th, 2019, regular board meeting, with the exemption of taking out 1.4, approval of minutes.
Thank you, may I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, it's been moved and properly seconded. And can you call the roll, Dr. Rock?
Mrs. Gator?
Yes.
Mrs. Moomin?
Yes.
Mrs. Elba?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Miss Mitchell?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. We're now going to move to item 1.5, public participation. If anyone had picked up a card prior to entering tonight's meeting and filled it out and gave it to Dr. Rock, do you
Yes.
have one?
We have one with, from Mrs. Underwood.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Crystal Underwood, and I reside at 24409 Emory Road, Warrensville Heights, Ohio. I would like to say welcome back, Mrs. President. I haven't seen you around for a while,
Thank you.
but welcome back. And I would like to congratulate the new board member, Darren Roberts. I spoke with him, and he said he had great leadership skills, and he was going to work well with teams. So I want to congratulate him once again. And I just want to congratulate you two guys on the school system and how it's made progress. So thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there anyone else, Dr. Rock?
No.
Okay,
No
thank
more.
you. We're at item 1.6, superintendent updates. Mr. Charlie?
Yes, I have a few updates, just some updates on what's going on, a few items that have occurred, just to update the board and the community. First update is on the beam signing today. We had our new school beam signing this morning. Our board members were there. We had students from Eastwood, Westwood, and John Dewey present, and also our 8 students. This beam will be erected at the peak of the new building, so it'll be in the front, the peak highest portion of the building. So we have one more person to sign, so we'll have another, Ms. Moomin to sign it tomorrow morning, and then it'll be processed and start to go up. If you've been by the new building, you'll start to see it's really coming into play. You can really see things going up. The floor has been laid down for the gym and cafeteria. We were in there today. We had Lester McDonald and Kayla went in, and she'll be posting some pictures later today. But the building's really coming along. You'll start to see the brick going up on the outside. We're really pushing for this building to get done as soon as possible. But Affinity is doing an outstanding job with getting the building up. So kudos to our students. The kids were so excited to sign the dean this morning. They were very excited. Very cold too. We drove the bus right up there to get off the bus, jumped off, signed the dean, got back on the bus. But it was a great experience for our students in history making because they, for the rest of their lives, those young people, when they ride by that school, know that their name is part of that school and will be erected as part of the history of Warrensville High City School District. Ms. Bruce, she's not here, but perfect. At the next meeting, we can recognize Ms. Bruce. Ms. Bruce is recognized by 107.9 as Teacher of the Week.
Wow.
There was a great program that John Dewey recognizing her. She was nominated by an employee of the district. Ms. Bruce is a 2008 graduate of Warrensville High City Schools, and she's totally invested. Her two children go to our school. One is in Ms. Womack's class. Wow. Yeah, Ms. Bruce is an outstanding young teacher in our district, and we're very proud to have her home teaching our students and giving 100%. The last war, I'd like to commend Mr. Swift for a great job with the last war. That was our last football game on the football stadium. We didn't have a meet, well, we didn't have a formal meet where I did a presentation, but it was just a ceremony commemorating the stadium. The stadium's been here since 1964. The schedule for the new building anticipates that the stadium will be torn down this summer, and demolition will start and construction of the new building will start. So that was the last football game that will be played on that stadium. We have probably about 50 to 60 old players come, some coaches, Jamie Caleb in particular, a historic long teacher here, football coach, former NFL player, Coach Walker, players from I would say early 80s all the way to recent players. So it was a great event. One of the things that I did hear from that event is that we need to start retiring numbers of some players, notably people who made the NFL.
Yep.
We have two players in particular that made the NFL that we're all aware of. It's Darnell Sanders and David Patterson. Those two have made the NFL. They met at the highest level of football. If you go to other schools like Bedford and other places, they recognize their great players or people who make significant achievements. One thing I do want to ask the board looking forward is how do we start to do that, recognizing our great athletes. We had an alumni association who does recognize business people and so forth. But in combination with them or working with them, how do we start to establish a real Hall of Fame here? Because I do recall as a student, the middle school had every MVP, every record posted in the hallway. It was something that every student looked forward to that played any sport. Everyone wanted to get the records. Everybody wanted their name on the wall. Somehow, in the last, you got painted over. I don't know how that happened, but it did get painted over. I would say, I don't know when it got painted over, but it got painted over before I was here. And all that history just simply got painted away. So there's no record of all those middle school achievements that occurred. That was up to ninth grade. Mr. DeSanza was the teacher, and then it was took over by Mr. Winston. And in conversations with Mr. Winston, he said once he retired, it got painted over. So we have to reestablish a history recording mechanism here in the district so that our history is recorded and our young people can start to see the past, know the past, and have things to reach or goals to achieve. If you go through our school now, we don't have a record board, we don't have any of those things. That if you go to any new high school, you will see records from the past. You will see leading scorers, leading best rushers. You will see girls, best track runners, and all those things. So that's something that we have to really work on and work toward moving forward. And this event kind of solidified that in my mind that, you know, a young first grader here should have something, if he's gonna play sports or academics or anything, they should know who are the most prominent people from their city and be able to follow them. When we grew up, there was, you know, the mayor was the prominent person. I remember in second grade, he was in, I think, high school, a senior. They took him to every school and gave everybody an autograph, and I think everybody remembered that. And that was something people aspired to. So we want to restart some history and some tradition and get some names and people recognized moving forward. So that's something we'll bring forward later in collaboration with the Alumni Association, not just the board, the Alumni Association also. Education for all stakeholders. We are partnered with Tri-C, the city of Warrensville, to offer GED courses for parents or anybody in the community that needs further education. So this is the first, I would like to thank Dr. Reynolds for getting this spearheaded and started. He got this process going, and it's coming into reality. So this is something that he identified in his work at the high school that we need more training for parents. And then there's a group of people who live in the community that never attended our schools, but have an effect on our schools because they live across the street from our new school, they're at the gas station, and they need further education. So we started these meetings, and this is the first thing that came from it. So these GED courses will start in December. They'll be distributed at all our schools, so we got the flyers today, so they'll be distributed, so go home with every student to start this, because we believe that if we educate our parents and help our parents who need it, our mobility rate will go down, because people will have something to stay here for, and then all these jobs that we have around here, Amazon and other places, they can get the jobs and become positive, productive people in our community. HBCU College Fair, again, this is the biggest historical black college fair in probably the Midwest that will be hosted here next week. They anticipate over 2,000 students at this event. So it's always real big. All those who've been here before, it'll be a step show. It'll be various colleges, over 40 different HBCUs to be here. A lot of times kids get accepted on site, so if they have their transcript, a lot of times they get accepted on site. We've had students accepted on site. It's a great experience, and it'll be a great opportunity for any young people. So anybody in the community that knows anybody, please tell them to come to our high school next Saturday. It'll be a great event. And that concludes my report. Wanted to make it real brief, but just wanted to share some real highlights of some things that's going on and share some insights on some things we need to do moving forward. Moving to any questions?
I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rock, we're on item 1.7, Treasurer's Update.
Oh, sorry.
So the state changed the due date for the 5-year forecast, so now it's due in November instead of October. So we're going to cover the 5-year forecast tonight, and this is on the agenda up for approval. So everybody's getting a PowerPoint that's in blue, and then the actual 5-year forecast with its notes is the thicker document. So in summary, the revenue versus expenditures, our ending cash balance meets the board-approved targets through 2024, but notice that the revenue is declining due to the lack of state funding, and we'll get into that as we move along. Our general fund revenue sources continue to be real estate taxes at 50%, state foundation at 31%, and other state at 3.1%. The only two places where all all the districts were guaranteed the same funding from last year due to House Bill 166. So in other words, our funding for state funds was frozen. The only places that we saw some growth was the enrollment growth supplement, which is $76,000 for this year, and next year $109,000.
Dr. Rock, can you explain that so people, because I know sometimes people don't think our enrollment numbers are accurate.
Oh, yeah, that's, as we're getting these supplements because the state sees that our enrollment is increasing. So what they did was they froze the state funding for the school year, for this school year. The governor in the new biennium budget, we had a lot of productive conversations on changing the formula and the state funding, but then the governor just said, that's it, it's just gonna be frozen. But this was one of the adjustments that he was giving to districts. If there was a district that was having substantial growth over the last 2 to 3 years, they give you a supplement. So these are two byproducts that, yes, the district is seeing a growth in enrollment. So these are two add-ons that we are getting. So this is true increases in funding, and it's in our 5-year forecast. Does that help, Mr. Jolly?
Yes, sir.
The challenges to our operating revenue, House Bill 166, again, for the budget, froze the foundation funding for all districts and at fiscal year 2019 levels. The only increase was restricted student wellness and success funds, which is in another fund, so you don't even see this on the 5-year forecast. I mean, to our district, we did a sizable amount of funding that we're getting there, but again, that's not in the 5-year forecast. The amount that you do see in the 5-year forecast is the supplement that we just talked about. There's new initiatives for restricted student wellness and success funds with an uncertain future. In other words, it's the student wellness and success is a 2-year program, and we don't know if that will continue. And the growth supplement, just as I said, is our truly only our unrestricted tax increase. Tax delinquencies and collection rates, we have to continue to keep a pulse on that. So if you look at our general fund expenditures, on the expenditure side, you see that wages and benefits continue to be the large portion of expenditures, which is what it should be. We're a service-based entity anyways. We're at 63%. The state used to come and look at you if you start to approach over 85%. So we're well below that benchmark, so we're at a healthy percentage. And then you can see the next biggest expenditure is services. Those are like purchase services. The general fund expenditures by object, again here this is just another graph, but it's presented in a different way. So you can see the red portions are wages, blue is benefits, and orange is services. So again, those are our primary expenditures for the district. So in conclusion, the new state budget for House Bill 166 freezes the funding to fiscal year 2019 levels with no increase in the general fund revenues. We anticipate that the state funding will remain flat outside of the enrollment supplement. This is to be conservative because there's no way of projecting what the state, how the state is going to adjust this, other than knowing that they have to go higher. If they go lower, then it's even worse. But we don't know if they're going up or down. So it's best just to keep it where we have right now. Other proposals like the College Credit Plus and special ed scholarships are expected to increase our costs going forward due to House Bill 166. That's expanding those programs. And the state budgets do continue to shift more responsibility over to our local taxpayers, while they also allow other school choice costs to rise, and we see that.
So I do want to comment that recently we received notice that on Ed Choice, our elementary schools are not eligible. So that is Eastwood, Westwood, John Lewis, K-5 is not eligible for Ed Choice. So at this time, there will be no new students in those grade levels entering Ed Choice starting next year. So every kindergartner that is eligible to come to our district will have to come to our district. They won't be able to use the Ed Choice scholarship. So that potentially can result in increases of our enrollment because those students will not, their parents won't have the option of Ed Choice. Now, it's a big deal in other places because a lot of different districts have a whole lot of schools that got added to the list. So we're one of the few districts that got schools taken off the list, and other districts got schools added on. So for us, we should see some decrease in that because we won't have any new additions to the list. Where if in the past, we always had new additions added every year.
And our trends, we've seen students coming back to the district. We
Right.
see that already, and just like Mr. Jolly said, we're getting a supplemental for that because the state is recognizing that our enrollment's increasing. And then we have to monitor, keep a close monitor on the 467 fund, which is the student wellness and well-being funds. So the big takeaway for the 5-year forecast, and just as, so you know, we have a new system that I'm utilizing this year, so that's why it's a nice PowerPoint, and it's in, I can't take the credit for changing the colors on PowerPoint. You know, mine are normally black and white, simple presentations. But anyways, this is my slide where these are the things that I usually cover, like the takeaways that we always talk about. The 5-year forecast, it's funded in all 5 years, which is fantastic for the school district. It's within current resources until 2022, which includes the renewal of a 5-year emergency levy in November 2020, and there would be no increases in taxes. So if we stay on that point right now, we're within board policy. The board policy says that if there's deficit spending starting in year 3, the superintendent and treasurer will take note of it. That's where we're at here, because even though you see it in line 6.01 right now, if you go further down, the levy renewal captures that. In other words, there's a negative 302,000, and then the levy renewing down, if you go further down on a column, you'll see the levy renewing at 972,000, I believe. It's in the 900s. So that covers that. So we're good there. So the 3rd year is where the treasurer and superintendent will take note, and we have. We're anticipating substantial savings when we open the new building, coming up next November in 2021. Or no, 2020, so next year. So once those savings are measurable, we're going to incorporate that into the 5-year forecast. At this point right now, it's not measurable in calculating. And then we'll also look for further anticipated savings and pursue other expenditure improvements. So we have a handle on that. And we're going into our 12th year of spending within current resources, and this is where we control our own destiny, and this is why we wrote our board policy. And you notice the board policy is in the notes of the 5-year forecast, so this is all documented. And then last but not least, I always come back to this, our certificates of participation payments are encumbered and projected for the next 5 years. We're required to just project 1 year. That's all we're required by law. But again, this gives proof that it's 5 years, so it lets the investors know, hey, we're serious about making our payments. It's right in our spending plan. So that covers the 5-year forecast. Just a little snapshot on the COPS and bonds financing for Phase 2. These were these recent trips that I had to make to Cincinnati and New York and New Jersey. They were very favorable. Both deals sold. The first deal was for $22 million in certificates of participation, and the second was $39 million in bonds. They were sold with enormous investor demand for the district's credit, and that's, in other words, that's our deal. You know what we're selling. They call it the credit. They said that they were really interested in us. On the bonds, there were some extremely large companies that were coming in to buy our bonds. And next month, I'll present all the details of this. But as a result of having great investor demand, we ended up with some really good rates. And this affects the district for the next 30 years. These are the rates we're going to use to make our payments to pay for the new buildings. Sort of like when you buy a house. You know, the bank gives you a loan to build your house if you were building. And then, you know, you build your house, you pay for it with the money the bank gives you, but then eventually within 6 months or a year, you got to make a payment to the bank, you make your mortgage payment. So these are our mortgage payment rates. The $22 million COPS, 3.35%, which is a phenomenal rate. The rate for the bonds is 4.21, which is also a great rate. But what I have in parentheses is our arbitrage rate, which is the built-in rate, which is 2.64, which gives you more of a feel for how good the deal was. It has a little bit of a slightly higher interest rate, but this is because of the finance model that we've talked about in depth, where we had to generate some extra premium on the bonds in order to generate some money so we can delay some of the payments of the new bonds while the old bonds are paid off. So that's part of that model. So we really landed in an exceptional place for the district. These rates were a result of true expertise with our municipal advisor, effective pricing by Fifth Third and UBS, and probably most importantly, a favorable interest rate market. And then the next section is some procedures. Please take one. Oh, yeah, these are thicker. There's two procedures that I'm handing out, and both of these procedures will assist the Treasurer's Office with improving the communication among staff and stakeholders in regards to the credit card checklist form and board professional development. On the credit card checklist form, you can see it's pretty self-explanatory. It has, the first step is to bring a purchase order. We cannot do anything without the purchase order, so the staff knows we've got to bring a purchase order. The date that it's checked out, it's due back within 5 days. The treasurer reserves the right to deem the purpose of the acceptable use due to vendor not accepting normal purchase order or an online purchase. In other words, if it's a vendor where we could cut them a check and we just have to set up an account with them, we're going to do that instead of just a credit card. The credit card can't be used to circumvent the normal purchase order process. And the key thing to this is to email the treasurer to schedule a meeting in order to review the checkout of the card and bring all the approved purchase order and requisition. This has been in place now for over a month, and it's been working very well. Staff will reach out to me, they're like, hey, we need a credit card. And Mr. Jolly was gracious to train all of the stakeholders involved, so everybody knows this, and they'll reach out and they'll say, hey, I'm looking forward to, I just need to set up a meeting. All they have to do is email me and we set up a meeting, then we plan ahead. And the other thing is that for travel expenditures, the card will not be checked out for the individual to take on the trip. The hotel may require a card when you check in, just like we do when we travel, and that's for incidentals, but if you have no incidentals, then your card's not charged. So that covers the credit card. Then also there's a form in there for if it's returned and I'm not in the office, my staff has a form to follow on how to check in the credit card. And my staff's all trained on this procedure also.
So, Dr. Rock, the only individuals that can get this credit card are administrators and above, or can teachers?
Administrators
Can a teacher?
predominantly. A teacher if needed be, but they would have to go through their administrator first and
Okay.
contact me.
All right,
It's mostly through the administrator, so like if a staff member's traveling, they usually go through, it funnels through one of their department or department that they report up to.
okay.
And then the second form is a form that would improve the communication amongst the board and the treasurer's office on professional development for the board. It pretty much says that our board policy and revised code states that board members will be paid for attendance at approved training programs, and that the board encourages attendance at the various professional development workshops, but it is recommended that board members interested in attending professional development seek prior approval through board action at a work session or regular meeting. And then also in here, I mentioned that the board at the organizational meeting, just like you did this past one, you establish pre-approved recurring conferences that you go to, NSBA, OSBA, Board Leadership Institute. You could establish anything in there, and then that establishes for the calendar year. And then if a board member has something new or something different they would want to go to, they would fill out this form. And then this would filter up to Mr. Jolly and myself so we know to put it on an agenda. And then if it's an emergency, down at the bottom, notice I have, we just have to at least get approval from the board president to just approve it in some way, so then at least it's communicated, and this way the board knows amongst yourselves who's going to what and what information is going to be shared. It'll just improve the process. And again, the procedure is not to prevent any board members to attend anything. It's not built for that. This is more built for me having approval to register with district funds and reimburse a board member for expenditures. So again, on this one, it has the board member's name, the workshop they're interested to attend, And then the rest of it I fill out as, when it's board approved, what date it is, approval to move forward, and then my staff would have my signature on there, and then they know that they could move forward, or I would move forward with it. This way it all moves through me first. Same as with the credit card. And then that completes my section.
Dr. Rock, I'm going to save my comments until we go into section 2.
Okay.
I just want to note that the board policy should be 01.
It's 0175.1.
It
Oh,
says
I'm sorry.
0715.1.
Yeah.
You're right, it is
Wrong.
0175.
175.
So what I'm understanding then is when we, just to make sure I understand, when a board member says, hey, there's a workshop that I want to go to, we fill this form out, bring it to your office or email it to you or something?
Yes.
All right.
And that'll start the process. And then also, the big thing is noting the organizational meeting as an opportunity where we can, or at any board meeting, you could come up and say, hey, there's this new, some new workshop was invented or something that we found out that the board's interested in. You could talk about it and approve it there. You could approve it any time, but this would at least just give some written background for us to follow.
I like the paper trail. Thank you.
Yeah, a paper trail. I'm sorry, I didn't use that term. So to memorialize what the expectations of the board and what's approved and not approved.
Just for the record, though, when we met at the organizational meeting, we did not approve all of those different sessions that last year. We moved it to February to have discussion about it, but that is still a good time for us to have
We can bring up our discussion, because this also is on the agenda, item 2.3.
I didn't hear you. say
It's
that.
also on the agenda as item 2.3,
Uh-huh.
and we can go into an in-depth discussion, because I've got quite a few things I want to speak to this.
Oh, so we don't want discussion on this now?
Not right now, because we've got to vote on it, and if we're going to follow Robert's rules, we should talk about it. We're going there right now.
That
All your
concludes my
points are
section.
valid. Okay, all right. Thank you, Dr. Rock and Mr. Jolly. Okay, we're moving in the consent portion of our agenda, section 2. We have a motion on the floor for consent, treasurer's report, and financial recommendations, items 2.1 through 2.4.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move the consent treasurer's report and financial recommendations. I'm looking for items 2.1 through 2.4.
You have a second?
A second.
Thank you both. It's been moved and properly seconded. The floor is open for discussion.
So I guess the only other thing that I would like to add, since we're just getting this, is I'd like to take the opportunity to review it. We can still vote on it, but just know that I may be bringing something back to the board for additional discussion at the next meeting. Thank you.
Dr. Rock, there's a couple of things that concern me. I don't mind the paper trail. I like the paper trail, but our current policy that we approved in April clearly states that board members shall be paid for attendance at approved training programs using ORC 3313.12. The other thing I noticed when I was pulling the policies for today is, for some reason, on board docs, and I'm not sure who is responsible for this, well, I don't know, because this was back in April, it didn't get uploaded. So the old policy is still out there. Because we had updated this policy, and when we updated it, we made it very clear as a board that Mr. Rhett was not to approve any travel unless it has been board approved. And when you and I spoke in late October, mid-October, you had been looking, I had also been looking, and 2 trips had not been approved. We were going to approve them tonight. And I shared then that the things that we do are fine, but I think we still need to follow our policy, which clearly follows our ORC 3313.12. I think once it's been board approved, Then if we put something in place for the paper trail, that's fine. But I think our policy, pretty clear, and to prove that it's been working, we've not had any issues up until
Until now, yes.
That is a concern. That's just my personal, I'm only one voice on that. But again, we're going to rectify tonight. I'm hoping we never have this happen again.
That's why I want to have the procedure.
Well, I understand.
It's not like I'm changing policy.
No, I understand, but I think some of this may go above and beyond. I think the meeting minutes speak for themselves once we've approved something. And then if you want to have us do some type of paper trail, that's fine. But that's
the
just.
key. That's the key
just-
ingredient, is
Yeah, the paper
that's
trail.
If you
I
look on the
agree.
form, board approval date and attach the
Yep.
minutes. And that's, so it's, in a way, it's for me to give to my staff to say, look, you're not allowed to be able to do any of this until it has my approval on it. And I'm
Understood.
just bringing it to the board it doesn't have to be board approved, but I'm bringing it to you out of respect.
No,
and-
understand.
And just to cue you in on the procedures that I'm having. We did this with the time sheets
Mm-hmm.
and some other things too. And it's worked out really good, so,
Okay.
yes.
So those were the few things that I just wanted to see. So can we get the new policy updated, Mr. Jolly,
Yes.
uploaded, I mean?
Madam Chair, I do have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Vice Chair.
Dr. Rock, as far as the credit card procedures, you said Mr. Jolly did the training, who trained the staff on that?
Oh, well, he presented my checklist with all of the steps of everything to do to his leadership and administration at multiple meetings.
And the employees know they have 5 days from when they return from the trip to?
Yes. Well, actually, they have 5 days to give it back to me once they check it out. They're not gonna take the credit card on the
Okay,
trip.
I got you.
Oh,
But
okay.
they could take it to their desk, make their order, do whatever they need to do, and then come back.
And is someone responsible per school or just you?
Just me.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Was there any other discussion, board?
I'd like to ask a couple of questions about the five-year forecast. All right, so at one point you said that there were some and you were anticipating some savings. Can't remember which slide that was.
Oh, no, we're gonna work on it.
Yeah, superintendent treasurer will develop, you're coming up with anticipated
Yes.
savings. Okay.
For in the future, in 3 years down the road.
Okay, all right, and then I misunderstood that. Second question I wanted to ask is the STAR account. Is that included in the five-year forecast?
Yes.
Where would I find that?
That's in, if you look in the notes, it's in our interest revenue.
In the big packet?
Yes.
Okay.
On the big one.
And what,
Our interest revenue is about 675,000. It's part of that. It doesn't show up just by itself.
I don't know what's going on with my eyes today. What
It
page
is
would that be?
page... Page 10, near the bottom. It's in other local revenue. So there's the breakdowns there. So if you see the first one, it says tuition payments, Medicaid, pilot payments, and then interest. It's right in the middle.
All right,
So this year we're projected at 675,000, and it's going down because interest rates are going down. When you look into the future, because we have less to invest, and then the interest rates go down.
all right. Would it be possible for me to come into your office and just look at those statements?
Yes, you can look at all of them.
All right. I
We get
appreciate
interest
that.
from Star Ohio, from PNC Bank, Fifth Third, and UBS. And I thank the board. The board was, when I first started here, I asked the board if I could open a Star Ohio account.
So do we allocate those interest funds for anything in particular? The revenue, do we allocate that for anything in particular, or it just goes into like a general
It goes
fund
into the
account?
general fund.
Okay. All right, and then I think there was one other. Oh, you kind of touched on the fact that revenues were declining.
Yes.
So what is the amount that you're seeing? I see on your slide where it kind of shows, but
Well, it's
Can you kind of
declining because state revenue is kept flat. So we don't have the normal growth in state revenue that we've had.
okay,
So when the new biennium budget comes out, if the state comes back to a formula, we're gonna see an increase, but we can't project that right now, so we're keeping it flat. So by keeping that flat, other things are growing, but now that's not growing enough because state funding is 50% of our revenue.
so we're talking about that cups. what got-
Exactly,
okay.
yes, that's the Cup Patterson. If we would've been on the Cup Patterson, we would've been able to project an increase because it's based on enrollment. But right now, the governor froze our funding, so we're frozen.
Okay. All right, I'm good, thank you.
Are there any
Great
more
questions.
questions, discussion? If not, Dr. Rock, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Mrs. Elba,
Yes.
Mrs. Gator,
Yes,
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Next on the agenda, I need a, excuse me, a motion on the floor for consent superintendent's recommendations and presentations for board action certified staff, items 3.1 through 3.7.
Madam Chair, I move the consent superintendent recommendation and presentation for board action certified staff for the items 3.1 through 3.7.
May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Moved and properly seconded. The floor is open for discussion. If there's no discussion, Dr. Rock, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Elba,
Yes.
Mrs. Gator,
yes,
Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Next, we are at item 4. We need a motion on the floor for consent agenda approval for superintendent's recommendations and presentations for board action classified staff for items 4.1 and 4.2.
Madam Chair, I move the consent superintendent recommendation and presentation for board action classified staff, looking for items 4.1, 4.2.
a second,
Thank you. Board, is there any discussion, questions, comments? Okay, if none, Dr. Rock, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gator,
yes,
Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Mrs. Elba,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell.
Yes, motion has been approved, 5-0. Next on the agenda is item 5. Need a motion on the floor for consent agenda, superintendent's recommendations and presentation for personnel and programs, and that will be items 5.1 through 5.4.
Madam Chair, I move the consent super,
Oh, can you separate 5-4?
We need to amend the motion. I have a motion on the floor, please, for consent agenda, superintendent's recommendations and presentation for personnel and programs, items 5.1 through 5.3.
Madam Chair, I move the consent superintendent recommendation and presentation for personnel and programs. I'm looking for the items 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3.
May I have a second?
a second,
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So, Mr. Jolly, I have a question. You said that last week that the ban was suspended because of an investigation, but you never got back, and now it's on the agenda.
So the ban, we were talking about an executive session today.
So, but if it's suspended, then we shouldn't vote on it. So is it not suspended, or it is suspended?
Well, the
This-
trip already
sorry.
occurred on
November
November
2nd.
Okay.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Superintendent Jolly, on the Cleveland Ballet, we always had second graders?
2nd. No, so we, in the past, used, middle school students. We currently do not have second graders, we have the, 4th and 5th graders participate. So the ballet is centered at Eastwood at this time.
Thank you so much.
Is there any other discussion? If none, Dr. Rock, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Moomin,
Yes.
Mrs. Elba,
Yes.
Mrs. Gator,
yes,
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Now, if we may have a motion on the floor for item 5.4, resolution regarding student suspension appeal.
Madam Chair, I move the consent superintendent recommendation and presentation for personnel and programs. I'm looking for item 5.4, resolution regarding student suspension appeal.
A second?
Thank you. It's been moved and properly second. The floor is open for discussion.
So, Mr. Jolly, what grade was this and what was the infraction?
I'm not sure. Ms. Rudolph, do you know what this appeal is?
You know what the infraction was?
It's in, I don't know, I can,
Yeah, if you pull it
pull
up.
it up.
Sometimes you have to be very careful
Yeah, what we discussed.
what you
I just
discuss.
asked for the infraction and the
Because of the
school.
confidentiality rules, you have to,
We're not discussing the child, though.
okay.
We're going to maintain order. Thank you.
It don't matter, I'm voting no anyway, but I was just wanting to know what the infraction was.
We'll
Because if we
maintain
follow,
order.
excuse me, if we
No,
follow.
I'm saying we're going to maintain order. He's looking it up.
But-
Let him answer your
but
question.
Let me
There-
just finish
you-
my
you
statement,
made your
please.
statement,
Let me
Ms.
finish
Elba.
my statement. My
We've
statement.
made
my
your
s-
statement.
No,
We're
I
going
did
to
not make my
maintain
statement.
order
I
in
did
this.
not make my statement,
You
Ms.
made your
Mitchell.
statement. He's got it right here. Just let him answer your question, and then we can move on with the vote.
But I'm still not finished with my
That's
statement.
fine.
Go ahead, Mr. Jolly.
Go ahead, Mr. Jolly, please.
Repeated, level 2, repeated behavior of disruptive nature.
So my
And-
state,
And level 2, failure to comply with directives.
okay, so my statement is, if you're receiving title monies, there's only certain things that you can suspend for and certain things you can't. So that's the reason for my question regarding the infraction. And so if it's not that level, then that's why I'm asking. So you can go ahead with the vote now,
Rock,
Dr.
can you
Rock.
please call the vote?
Mrs. Elba?
No.
Mrs. Gator?
Yes.
Mrs. Moomin?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes, motion passes 4-1.
For the record, Connie, I'd just like to say, I don't know those rules. I'm not familiar with the rules that you only can suspend for certain things.
When you receive certain title dollars, it says on there what the infractions are that you can and cannot suspend for because you're receiving those title dollars.
I would appreciate if you could share that information. Ms. Rudolph.
She knows the rules.
You got to speak up.
Could she come to the podium?
Ms. Rudolph, can you please come to the podium and provide clarity?
I'll forward you the information from the training.
We are maintaining order in this boardroom. Please do not speak out again.
I can speak out.
You
Ms. Mitchell.
cannot speak
I
out. That
can.
is rude and
Board Member Elba,
disrespectful.
can we just carry
You
on?
do not get to just take the floor like you feel
Madam
like.
Chair.
Sure I do.
No, you don't.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Connie.
Title
please.
dollars have nothing to do with suspension.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
We are at item 6, school board conferences, conventions, and workshop. We had, oh, you know what? I know it's late, but we need to add the Council of Great City Schools and NAPSI, because those two conferences were attended without board approval. So if we can add those to this agenda, because as Member Gator said, organizational meeting, we did not do the blanket approval, and I searched all the way through April. We never did the blanket approval, so we've got to approve them now.
It was just mentioned in talk.
It was
about
mentioned, it was
whatever
discussed, and then it just never got approved.
And then I remember when we were talking about it, we didn't know what the new dates were. There was like no
Correct.
new information. Remember, we were trying to print out
Yes, sir.
any kind of brochure on it.
Yeah.
20th.
So we're going to add in a NAPSI and the, what's the other one that you went to, Member Albert?
Greater City.
Council of Greater City Schools.
Okay, thank you. If I may have,
Is there any other one?
it was just those.
OSDA?
It's just those two.
Did I go to any from
Yeah.
OSBA? Mm-mm. No,
Just
but
those two.
you should probably check your March 20th agenda. because I
did.
see it, I see it on there for a
It's
vote.
on it, but we didn't vote. And I looked at the meeting minutes as well. We didn't vote, okay? So we're going to vote on it now. We're going to keep this moving because we're going to maintain order.
Maintain
So,
order. Oh, my goodness.
What section would you like that in, Madam Chair?
we're going to put it right here with NSBA 2020.
Okay. So section 6.
Section 6, please.
You want to make that 6.2 and 6.3?
We can put it as 6.1.
Oh,
It'll
okay.
be ABC, just as you
Okay.
proposed.
ABC, okay.
All right, if I can have a motion on the floor for item 6 to approve the Board Professional Development for the 2020 Annual Conference for NSBA, NAPSI, and the Council of Gray City Schools.
Madam Chair, I move the School Board Conferences, Conventions, and Workshop approving the item 6.1, Board Professional Development for the NSBA 2020 Annual Conference, April 4th
Through the
April
6th.
6, 2020, and for the previous board member Elba's trip at 6.1 with NASB, and the actual trip at 3 would be Council of Greater City Schools.
May I have a second?
I second it.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Dr. Rock, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gator?
Yes.
Mrs. Moomin?
Yes.
Mrs. Elba?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
No.
Ms. Mitchell?
No. Motion passes 3-2. At this time, I need a motion to enter in. Did we put it up?
Madam Chair, do we need to say at this meeting who's actually going to the NSBA conference, or we have to wait?
Do you need that now, Dr. Rock?
You
or
need that
no?
now, Dr. Rock?
No, you had just approved it as a blanket, so it means any board member would go.
Oh, okay.
What do you mean we just approved? We just approved it as a blanket?
We approved
Yeah,
it, and then
if you're not going to specifically say, that means anybody that signs up, the board agrees that the board can
No,
go.
that was-
Oh, okay.
And then what happens, he'll come back and he'll ask us who's going, and then they'll get our flights.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's been past practice. Okay. If I can have a motion to enter into executive session,
Are we doing the unfinished business?
no, item 11.1.
Madam Chair, I move that we enter into executive session for the purpose to consider the appointment,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
employment discipline, dismissal, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official.
So your 11.1 is property.
I was just getting ready to say, I used the wrong number. Please forgive. It is 11.3. Dr. Rock, can you please call the roll?
So 11.3 is first?
Yes, sir.
Sequence? Okay. And who seconded?
Nobody yet.
So we're going in, I apologize.
We're going out of order because one is fast,
Okay,
and then we're going to move into the other ones.
I didn't realize that we were going in for two different things, so that's why I'm asking. That wasn't made clear to me.
Need a second?
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Dr. Rock, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Moomin?
Yes.
Mrs. Elba?
Yes.
Mrs. Gator?
Yeah.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. So at this time, we want to thank everyone for coming to our meeting. And just so the community knows, we are going to invite our board member-elect, Earl Roberts, to attend this particular executive session because the items being discussed are going to roll over into next year that will require votes, and he will need to be fully aware of what's taking place. So we do want to thank you for attending tonight. We will be entering into two different executive sessions. Will come out of this one, and then we'll go back into another. So instead of having you all wait until we come in and out, we're just letting you know it's okay if you'd like to go home, but we do want to thank you for attending.
That would be awesome. I'm thinking
All right.
the new buildings, you know, we have